Experts from around the world are meeting in Toronto this week to discuss what to do to prevent the devastating consequences of natural disasters. The World Conference on Disaster Management is kicking off with the question, how prepared are we? Paul Kovacs is the moderator at the conference and the executive director of the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. Well, Paul, the timing of your conference is quite interesting, given all that's been going on in Calgary. Has that been dominating a lot of the conversations?
We, of course, have been planning this event for a while, but certainly Calgary is a big part of our discussions, and we started by thinking of the people being affected right now, and our hearts go out to them.
Tell me, if you're planning for disasters and how to deal with them, sort of from a mathematical point of view, how unlikely does an event have to be for you still to plan for it? Like a 100-year event, a 200-year event, a 10-year event? Because there must be some things that are so unlikely that devoting resources to planning for those would take resources away from more likely disasters.
I did some volunteer work for the United Nations looking at the threat of asteroids coming out of space and hitting our planet. There's some of us working on almost all perils. Part of what we were sharing with the Secretary General is that we have new devices for watching, and we're going to see a lot more of these, and we're going to be sending notices out saying, here comes something, are you ready? So there's going to be a lot more information. The risk depends on society, and some communities set the bar a little higher and some a little bit lower depending on how they view risk.
How prepared was Calgary in this situation?
Two-part answer. On the one hand, we saw an absolutely wonderful response by the police, the fire, the emergency officials, by the community at large. When disaster struck, people step up, they knew what to do, they were helping their neighbors, they were doing all the right things. The part that wasn't done so well was anticipating, investing in the prevention in the past. There was a large flood in that area in '95, another one in 2005. This is even bigger, but it's not clear that we learned a lot from the previous events, and some of the things that I would have liked to see a community and other communities do to learn from past events, I'm not seeing happen frequently enough.
And does the onus for that kind of preparedness fall on the community or on the province? I mean, in the U.S., we hear about FEMA all the time swooping in when there are large natural disasters because really they believe that it can only be dealt with both financially and otherwise, you know, at the federal level. So in Canada, how does that work?
Disaster management is definitely a shared responsibility. Individually, you're responsible for your own family, your own home, your own business, depending on how you start. The responsibility moves up to the community. Sometimes something will overwhelm you and you need to call on the community. That's what 911 means. You've called outside for help. When the community is overwhelmed, you call on the province, and when the province is overwhelmed, they call on Ottawa. We have a hierarchy. It's part of our structure. It's been in place for many decades. It's fairly well understood within the management community, that kind of hierarchy, that approach. Some other countries do it the other way around. You call the president, wait for the alert in the United States. But in Canada, you start locally. When overwhelmed, you call.
It's making me think about infrastructure, because that's a lot of what gets damaged in these situations. And we've heard that Canada has an infrastructure crisis. You know, this estimate of what it would cost to bring us up to where we should be is astronomical.
In the last 40 years, the frequency and severity of the kinds of events that we're responding to right now, they've been growing. We've seen more larger events for several decades now, and the expectation we're going to see more in the future. And it's due to many factors, but at least two of them. One is our infrastructure isn't able to do the job that we were expecting in the past. The other is the climate is changing. It's bringing more larger storms. The combination of an aging infrastructure and changing climate are two of the driving factors why we're expecting to see even more of these events in the future.
Quick question, 15 seconds. What disaster scares you the most, is most likely to happen, and is that city ready for it?
I'll give a two-part answer. An earthquake in Vancouver is the most likely really large event. Vancouver's worked hard to prepare for it. An earthquake in Montreal and Ottawa is less likely. They've done very little to prepare for it. So an earthquake in Montreal.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, Paul.
My pleasure.